The Nebuchadnezzar beginner tips and tricks you're about to see are essential for the first half of the game and apply to the very first release version of the game. I don't know if future patches, updates or expansions will change any of these, but anyway, let's begin. Map and objective overview. Once you start a new mission, pause the game and take a good look at your mission objective and at your map. Keep an eye on where the sources of water are so you know in which areas you should focus your farms on and where you can place your port, as well as where you can start placing your buildings and production blocks. Mentally mapping out where things can go beforehand will at least give you a plan of what to do once you actually start the game. Irrigation. Setting up the irrigation canals for your farms is almost a mini-game within the overall game of Nebuchadnezzar. If we consider Nebuchadnezzar a giant puzzle game, then setting up irrigation for optimal production is definitely a mini-game within it. Thankfully, the game makes this fairly straightforward in theory. Actually getting it done though requires some forethought and a bit of trial and error. Each farm, be it for crops or livestock, is at the center of two concentric colored squares. The green square shows you the maximum amount of land that the farm can tend to, while the blue square shows you the maximum range the haulers can move the resource produced in the farm. For this part, we will be focusing on the green square. In order for crops to be planted or goats to be raised, the land within the green square has to be, well, green. It has to have grass on it. This is the visual cue from the game designers that this is a fertile square. The problem is, these fertile squares are only adjacent to sources of water. Thankfully, the developers offer us a solution to this dusty problem: irrigation pumps and canals. First, let's look at the pumps. You have to place them on the shore of any source of water, but important to note is that you can only place them on squares that feature earth between two parallel sides. You will not be able to place pumps on anything smaller than that. The second thing you need to be aware of is that the pumps have a limited range. They can only pump water a certain distance. The way in which you go around this issue is by connecting several pumps to the same irrigation canal. Now, once you have your canals built and water flowing through them, you can see that they affect the land surrounding them up to 3 squares. This means that in order to make optimal use of your farms, you need to set up the irrigation canals in the immediate squares outside the green square, because the green square range is 3 map squares long. In this way, you won't be taking up precious growing land with your irrigation canal. Double dipping on your irrigation canals is heavily suggested as well. If you can place 2 farms alongside the same canal, you'll be getting double the bang for your ancient Mesopotamian currency. And since I mentioned money, let's jump to the next tip about setting up trade. Place a port really early in the game. In Nebuchadnezzar, buildings don't require road access or to be manned in order for them not to collapse, as is the case with Impressions games. Place a port early in the game so that you don't find yourself in a situation where you'll be out of money. I did that on stream a while back. Don't be like me, learn from my mistakes. You will get an extra infusion of money when you are broke, sure, but it's best to not have to rely on that. I also expect future difficulty settings and mods to be more strict and challenging with your expenditures. Make sure you have enough space for at least 2 warehouses within the port's yellow square range. In later missions, the more the merrier. And obviously road access to your settlement, after which study your trade opportunities to see what's the first place that you'll need to trade with for something you need. In the first half of the game, that being copper, and what is something they need so you can set up an excess production of that product, usually pottery. Quick tip, when setting up your warehouses, you can deselect all the resources by clicking the button on the bottom of the warehouse window. Distance matters. Shortening roads by a couple of squares can make the difference in your supply of whatever material or product your road length affects. You can and should redraw the initial road, the one that's needed to bring people in and let them out, in order to maximize your build area, because you will need every bit of the map at your disposal in order to accomplish the mission objectives, especially in later maps. The double U block, not the W, but a double U, because when you build it, it looks like a mirrored letter U. This is one of the simplest block designs to implement and cover with one market initially. There might be more efficient block designs out there, but this is what I use and it feels like a very efficient design, at least currently. As you advance in the game, the W will turn into a triple and then quadruple U, but the same idea holds. Production, supply, and distribution. Most of your problems in the game won't come from gameplay bugs, mobster gods, or disaster mechanics, because Nebuchadnezzar doesn't have those. Well, it doesn't have the latter two of those anyway. Instead, your problems will come either from your choices of situating buildings and roads and issues in production, supply, or distribution. You're either not producing enough things, not transporting them in a fast enough manner to where they're needed, or they're not distributed efficiently enough once they're there. Simple as that. So when you're faced with a lack of something, check your production and consumption stats and then look into that respective production block. Sometimes your buildings aren't maxed out with workers, or the warehouses aren't properly connected. Now here's a couple of miscellaneous tips. Actively switch away from producing bricks once your monuments are built. The clay will come in much handier making pottery for export and tablets for internal use. Your livestock farms tend to work best with 3 farmers and 2 haulers, while crop farms work well with 4 farmers and 1 hauler. Oh, and lastly, but not least, as a sort of a tip for the second half of the game, don't forget that you can import goods and products. You don't necessarily have to make everything on site all the time. Let me know in the comments if you have other suggestions for the first half of Nebuchadnezzar, and also if you have questions about the game, don't hesitate to ask them in the comments. Me or maybe some of my other viewers can maybe answer them. If you enjoyed this video, please don't hesitate to give it a thumbs up and share it wherever you think it makes sense. Also, it would be great if you'd consider subscribing and then clicking that bell notification button. That last part is super crucial to small channels such as my own. I also have a Patreon page, so for those of you who are inclined to, please check that out. I've been Steven Ansons, thank you very much for watching, have a great rest of your day, and see you next time.